So we've heard a lot of people talk about scale, how important scale is for affecting change. Our next speakers are working on a really massive scale, basically all the impoverished farmers in an entire country in Burma. So Debbie Aung Din and Jim Taylor work for Proximity Designs, and they design products that can be afforded by a farmer who makes less than $2 a day. And they're going to talk about how they have designed those products and how they've sort of redesigned the economy of Burma to help get those products into the farmers' hands. So here's Debbie and Jim.
Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Aung Din, and I'm from Myanmar, also known as Burma. And today we'd like to show you how design can be used to create social value in difficult places. Let me start by showing you two photos of rural Myanmar. Do you want to take a guess at when these were taken? The one on the left was taken in early 1900s, and the one on the right was taken in today, 2012. Here we are a century later, and conditions haven't changed all that much. People living in rural areas lack very basic goods and services. Myanmar is a classic difficult country. It's a big country of 60 million people, 2/3 of whom live in rural areas. And it's been severely isolated for the last 50 years under military rule. And until last year, it was considered, after North Korea, as to be the most isolated country in the world. Economist Paul Collier calls it a bottom billion country. And it's one of the poorest in the world, worse off than many African countries. There's no functioning banking system, and 95% of people living in rural areas don't have access to electricity, phones, or roads and healthcare. So all of this makes it a very compelling and important place to try to use design to create social value.
We've lived in Myanmar for the past 9 years, and we want to say up front that neither Debbie or I have come from a design background. Our training is in economics and business. But we've always had an interest in the problems of poverty and the issues of economic development and social development. So let me briefly explain a bit of our background and how we ended up in a place like Myanmar. We've always sort of, because of our interest in development, we've always been drawn to some difficult places. And you've probably guessed it, that Debbie and I first met in the state of Mississippi. And like Emily said yesterday, we went to rural Mississippi and worked in some of the poorest counties in America at that time. This was in the 1980s. And we worked with a fellow named John Perkins, who was a community organizer extraordinaire and a civil rights activist. And the thing we learned working with John for 7 years was that it takes deep knowledge and proximity if you're going to tackle the complex problems of poverty, whether it's in America or internationally. So after our 7 years in Mississippi, we took maybe a slightly different place, and we moved to Cambodia. And this was post-Khmer Rouge Cambodia, after the country had just emerged from genocide. And we worked there to help rebuild the country that was just starting from ground zero. It was a very difficult and isolated place to work, but it turned out to be a real shaping experience for us as well. From Cambodia, we moved on to Indonesia, where we served as economic and social and environmental policy advisors to the government. We lived there for 7 years. Then we moved to California. Not such a difficult place, but we really enjoyed our life in California. But all this time, we had been keeping our eyes on Myanmar, Burma. And we saw the compelling needs there, and we had visited a number of times. And in 2004, we packed up our 2 kids and moved our family to Yangon, from Los Angeles to Yangon. It was quite a move. But what kept us, what interested us in this move was we wanted to see if there could be a different approach to tackle poverty. We had been in the aid industry I'd worked in the private sector, and we saw a real gap, that maybe a place that a social enterprise could fit between humanitarian design, humanitarian work, and the private sector. So we wanted to see if a social enterprise could really tackle the problems of poverty in a big place, in a difficult place like Myanmar.
So our strategy was to focus on the 40 million people or so people living in rural areas. And they're at the epicenter of extreme poverty, like in many developing countries. These rural families earn their living by farming small plots of land, and they typically make $1 to $2 a day. And they just are struggling against extreme odds. After years of being in the aid world, we knew we wanted to have a different relationship with people, not as charity recipients or aid beneficiaries. And so we wanted to treat people as customers and have a mutual exchange where they get to decide whether something's valuable or not. We're held accountable through the market. And so these gentlemen here, they're at a product demonstration, and after the product's been demonstrated in a village, they're trying to decide for themselves whether the foot pump is worth buying or not. So this customer focus is what drives our approach to helping people. We're also attracted by the way designers start with empathy and not from sympathy. And we really like how designers try to not only uncover needs, but also understand people's beliefs and aspirations. And so our staff spend countless conversations with rural families throughout the year. This particular family was a product user, and they had started earning more income. And they were really proud of that their 12-year-old son, they were telling me how their 12-year-old son, they were able to keep him in school. And so I asked them, so you're hoping to see him complete high school? And they said, oh no, we're hoping to see him complete university. So it's just a matter of really understanding people's aspirations. As we spent time in rural areas, we began to see a lot of problems and needs. And for example, people were spending several hours a day just trying to get water to their crops. This man on the top is using a hand pump to water his tomato crops. And women will carry heavy watering cans weighing 40 pounds on each side on their shoulders, and doing that 200 times a day. So we began to see these problems and reframe them as opportunities. At the bottom here, there's what they call maunduts. It's a long bamboo pole with a lever and with a bucket at the end, and it gets water from a hand-dug well. And they used these thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt. In fact, you can see one in the Museum of Chicago, I believe. So we saw that there was huge opportunity to create tremendous social value by helping rural families reduce their daily drudgery and improve their household productivity and incomes.
We've seen that both designers and entrepreneurs are driven by opportunities. And as we pursued the opportunities in Myanmar, we also discovered, as non-designers, the tremendous value of the design discipline in helping to solve and reframe these problems as opportunities. It was in 2004 that design thinking was beginning to be a popular idea, and we got connected with Stanford's D School and began to talk about ways that they could help us not just do design thinking, but do design doing. So we made an early decision in our organizational life to invest heavily in an internal capability of design, because we thought it could really create a lot of social value. So the first thing we did was form a design team and set up a design lab located in Myanmar. Now, that was kind of difficult because in Myanmar no one was really trained as designers. So we had to pull together a team of both local people and bring in some outsiders. So this picture here is the fellow in green is a guy named Aung Koko, who's trained as an engineer, never done design work, but he formed the core of our design team. And then Alyssa Murphy is also there. She's a trained product designer with a master's degree in engineering from Stanford. Aung Koko and Alyssa have worked side by side together, day in and day out, for the last 3 years in Myanmar. And what makes design interesting for us is that working alongside of each other, they can really develop a deep understanding of the rural needs. Next. One thing we've learned is that doing design from a distance is extremely difficult when you're tackling complex problems. This is a picture of Alyssa talking to a woman and getting some feedback on a prototype they were testing to design a product that would be much easier for women and young girls to use, an irrigation pump. And what this picture doesn't show is how incredibly physically and emotional taxing this kind of work is. It's about 100 degrees outside. So it's the end of a day, and we'd been on the road for about a week. Doing design in difficult countries is really difficult, but it's also extremely rewarding. Next. So as a result of this work, we came up with a pump that's affectionately called by our users the baby elephant pump. And I happen to have one. Here it is right here. It's a pump that is super lightweight, makes it really easy to use, costs less than $15, can functions like pumps that are 10 times as much, 1,000 gallons an hour. It's really a great product. It became instantly our best seller. We've sold over 16,000 of these in 2 years. Next. For the past 18 months, Aung Koko and Alyssa have been working on another breakthrough pump that we think is really going to be a really innovative design. It was such a complex problem that we actually got some help from IDEO to help us work on this project. And we are really excited to announce it very soon. Let me run through a couple other quick products and services we developed. We've really thought a lot about value and what is valuable to people. But I had a conversation with a farmer about a year ago in the Irrawaddy Delta, and he said, you know, what farmers want are things that are practical and cheap. And that kind of cut through a lot of the stuff that we'd been working on about trying to understand a value proposition, utility propositions. Valuable, we want something that's practical and cheap. And so let me run through a couple of the products and services that we've developed over the last 9 years. This is a really interesting technique that rice farmers can use to grade their rice seed and clean out all the bad seed and increases their yields by about 15%. Next slide. This is Ma Yin. She's one of our communication designers. And we're working on a project to turn the traditional field of agricultural extension on its head and to really use communication design to communicate the value of this kind of technique to 5 million rice farmers across Myanmar. Rural energy is a huge issue in Myanmar. 95% of villages are off-grid. People use candles for lighting. We've been working on a design here. This product is a solar light that's super durable. We have guys climb up coconut trees 40 feet and throw it off. It still works. It'll last for 4 years, no maintenance. People love quality. And this is a water storage bag. We've been working on this project for, about 3 years. It's really been a complicated one to work on. But most recently, we set up about 5 different prototypes we had. All of them functionally held 250 gallons of water. Invariably, every user went zeroed in right on this model because they said, we want something beautiful on our farm too. If you had a chance to talk to our designers directly, they would tell you that the designing of the products is kind of the easy part. Figuring out how to getting them made in a developing country or in a difficult country is huge. Probably 70 or 80% of the problems come when you try to manufacture something. And we manufacture a lot of products. We've manufactured over 150,000 products. We do about 1,000 a week now. And yet it's really problematic. Our steel supplier, every load of mild steel we get has different dimensions. Our plastic extruder that we use, he calls us up all the time and said, hey, I don't have electricity today. I can't produce anything. Our team of contractor that welds some of our products together, they say, you know, we can't buy more welders because there's no banking system. We can't get any credit. Just problem after problem every day. Making things in difficult countries is a huge challenge.
So once we have a great product, it takes just as much innovation and design to figure out how to get it to not only a few villages, but to thousands of remote communities. So we had to figure out how to get our products and services past the last 9 miles. And typically, we found out that farmers would make it to town maybe twice a year. So in a country like Myanmar, there aren't any well-established distribution networks, commercial distribution networks in place. So we had to create our own over the last 8 years. And we just, what we did was we recruited 165 mom and pop agro dealers, shops in town. And then we have 850 or 840 independent village agents. They're like your Avon ladies in town, your local service providers. And 180 of these have set up their own village kiosks that exclusively sell our products. And then we have 1,300 village groups, which are act like buying clubs. So in the process, we've realized how valuable this distribution network has become as we can leverage it in the future for other products and services. And in the process, we've also we rebranded or developed a brand, a very strong brand. And Tomorrow Partners has just recently helped us in this rebranding process and marketing campaign. Ultimately, we are judged by our customers and the impact on their lives, and as well as their satisfaction. And every year we do surveys of customers and how the incomes have increased from using our products. And we typically find that they're double and triple their incomes after a season of use. And we always ask them what are their top 3 uses of income, and their number 1 is food for the family, number 2, school fees, to pay for school fees for children, and number 3 is buying inputs for the next crop season. But we also get unsolicited mail from customers, and I want to share a letter we got from a farmer. He wrote, my foot pump is serial number 4632. I wish it was serial number 0001, and I knew about it sooner. It has helped me turn my crops into gold. I'm not a paid actor who gets $400 to say this. I'm a real farmer, and if you don't believe me, you can come out to visit me. So despite having such satisfied customers, we saw that many families were really struggling against larger forces at play. Crop prices would collapse because of government policies, and farm credit was extremely scarce, and farmers just couldn't access markets because of the lack of infrastructure. So we began engaging government leaders around national economic policies, because that was our background, and we felt like we finally had an audience. So we used the deep knowledge and insights we gained from our customers and basically created a feedback loop into the top leaders. And we started applying user-centered design methods in policymaking. And we partnered with macroeconomists from Harvard University and got them to also start thinking like designers. We go on field trips and do need finding. We engage directly with farmers and communities. We road test new policy ideas with leaders and sort of get their feedback. This is Professor David Dappas up there, and he's what I call a muddy waters economist. He's fantastic at piecing together or synthesizing what's going on in the larger economy when there's no reliable, accurate official data in a country like Myanmar. Just to give you an example of the kinds of inroads we've made in policy making, we basically were able to change government policy on farm credit so that the government began providing 5 times more credit to 1.5 million farmers.
Our goal when we started Proximity Designs in Myanmar 9 years ago was to help people out of poverty. And you could say it's really essentially creating that kind of social value. And we wanted to do it on a big scale, not just a little pilot project that we'd been involved with in the past, but something that could really change an entire country. And we take measurement of the social value we create pretty seriously. Every year we interview hundreds of our customers to find out the kinds of changes in their lives that have occurred as a result of using one of our products or services. We also track, of course, our sales, because that's an indicator of how many people are finding these products and services actually valuable, because they have to buy them. So we wanted to share a couple things about what shared value has been created in Myanmar in the last 12 months. So we've helped about 1,300 people per day for a total of almost 500,000 people. And we measure how many of these people or their households have had their income increased so significantly over this period. And as we calculate the overall economic impact, we estimated over $50 million in economic impact. Thank you. Thank you. But of course, it's not just economics. And let me finish by telling you a story about a gentleman we met in upper part of Myanmar several years ago. He was attending one of our road shows. We go out and let people test drive these pumps, and he got on one of these pumps and he was treadling it away, and he just kept treadling and treadling. And another group of farmers were gathered around and kind of waiting their turn, and they were getting kind of impatient. And he was just treadling away. And finally, one of the guys said, "Hey, you know, it's our turn, let us try." And he stopped, and I can always remember this, he said to the guys, "Don't bother me, I'm dreaming." And it turns out this guy is a landless person without any land, and he was hoping, he was envisioning that finally there was a pump that he could buy that was affordable, and he could begin farming next season. And he could then start to have food for his family and additional income. And that's really what this whole thing is about. Creating social value, in our view, is really about making it possible for people to achieve their dreams.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys did the nice jokes.
Okay.
We'll make one final plug. If you're a communications designer or a product designer and would be interested in joining us, please do contact us. We're really always looking for really good design talent.